Oh,
Oh, no.
now we're live.
Hi there, everybody. We're just getting ready to get started. We'll wait for a few students to join us. My cameraman, Stefano, is going to give me the thumbs up when I'm ready to go. It's not quite 4 o'clock. Almost. You can give me the thumbs up when either someone's joined us or when it's 4 o'clock, please.
1 second.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody. It's Natalina coming to you live from Natalina's Kitchen, where I've been teaching authentic Italian and classic Italian cuisine since 2011. And we're dialing things down a little bit, helping those of you out that are isolated at home and want some basic recipe ideas with some pantry staples. And I'll give you lots of substitutions that you can do based on what you might actually have, okay? So today we're gonna do a turkey sugo with polenta, but basically you can use 1 pound of any type of ground meat, okay? So I have a turkey sugo because I'm gonna use a 1 pound of lean turkey, okay? Sugo is typically a meat and tomato sauce, okay? I'm gonna serve it with polenta, but you could serve it with rice, pasta, quinoa, even spaghetti squash, quite a number of things. You could even just serve it in a bowl with some really nice crusty Italian bread. Maybe the no-knead bread that we made on Monday in our class. You can go back and have a look at that if you're interested. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start with the ingredients. So if you want to follow along, great. If not, I suggest you get a pen and pencil and write down the ingredients. Okay, so first off, 1 pound of ground meat. I have 1 pound of lean ground turkey. Okay. So any type of meat or even a mix of a number of red meats would work great as well. Okay, I have a 1/4 cup or 4 tablespoons of virgin olive oil, and typically virgin olive oil is what I cook my sauces with. If you want some explanations about virgin olive oil and extra virgin olive oil, how to choose a real one, or what the difference is, that information is part of our Classic Italian program on the online school, and I'll tell you about that as we go. Okay, so we've got our meat and our olive oil. Then we have our sofrito in Italian, or mirepoix in French, which is basically the start to a tasty sauce, okay? So that is typically onions. So we've got a half a medium chopped onion. I've got 1 celery stalk chopped, and I have 1 large carrot that's also been chopped, okay? Now, that is the classic mirepoix or sofrito in Italian. We're gonna get a lot of flavor from that, and it's gonna help thicken up our sauce. We're also gonna add 1 large clove or 2 small cloves of minced garlic. This is 1 clove from my garden, which are really jumbo size, so it would be 2 regular. Then I have about a tablespoon of tomato paste. If you don't have tomato paste, you could easily substitute ketchup for that, okay? So those ingredients are pretty much what you would need for the basic recipe. If you're missing one of these, you could probably go without, but I would say of the 4, you want to have at least maybe 3 out of the 4, maybe 2 out of the 4 would be fine, but that does develop a lot of flavor, okay? Then we've got some add-ins that are optional. Oh, of course, tomatoes, forgot tomatoes. So this is a 750 ml bottle of passata or pureed tomato. Okay, that is not optional. You're going to need that for sure. If you have a tin of tomatoes, like a 28 ounce tin of plum tomatoes, you could always puree those in a food processor or with an immersion blender to get a pureed passata, which is what I have here. Okay, if you want information on how to choose tomatoes for a sauce, again, that information is part of our Complete Classic Italian program on the online school. It tells you all about different types of tomatoes and what the differences are and where to use them, okay? Excuse me. Okay, next up, these are now optional. These are little add-ins. If you have them, great, or if you like them and you want to add them, great. If not, you can leave them out. Okay, so I've got 1 yellow sweet pepper that I've cubed up here. I have 1 tin of mushrooms that I've cubed up, that are already sliced, and of course they're cooked because they were in the can. But you could use fresh as well if you have fresh. We would be sauteing those in a pan first though if you had fresh, and you would just have them sliced and ready. And then I have some fresh basil here. So if you don't have fresh basil, you could substitute dry basil for that, okay? So I think we've covered off everything that you need for the sauce. And then once the sauce is simmering, we'll get into the polenta if that's what you want to serve, or some alternatives there. Okay, so first off, just like any sauce we're making, we want a nice heavy bottom pot. Okay, so heavy bottom means a really thick bottom that conducts heat really well. Okay, so we're going to heat up our pot. I'm going to put the lid aside here. We'll get some heat going, and that's really important to get your pot heated. I'm on induction here, so it's going to be quite quick. So if you're on electric, it might take a little bit longer. It also depends what type of pot you have. Okay, so you want to get it hot, and I can easily tell when that's getting hot. Okay, and then to that, yeah, we're about ready. So to that, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And like I said, mine is virgin olive oil that I use to cook with. And then once it starts shimmering a little bit, we are going to add our ground turkey. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're just going to brown this. Okay, so we're just looking to get rid of all the pink, and then we're going to scoop it aside into another bowl. So I will let you know when we're at that point. As usual, I've got Stefano on my camera, my son. So if you have any questions, please just type them in the comments and we'll try and answer your questions. Okay? So you can hear this is starting to go. Typically, if you just let it sit for a couple minutes, kind of let it get started in there. I don't have a fancy camera above here, so I will tip this up and show you every once in a while. We'll move some of this a little bit maybe. Okay, so you can see it's starting to go there. I'm going to start breaking it up. I like a wooden spoon myself. That's kind of my utensil of choice or instrument of choice when I'm making a sauce. And you can see I'm just kind of breaking it up. Okay. If you had a really large pot and you were doubling this recipe, and I had a lot of meat in here, I've even used a potato masher to kind of break up, especially when it's a harder meat, like beef or pork or veal. They're harder. Turkey is pretty soft. Chicken would be really soft too if you wanted to use ground chicken, but a wooden spoon is great for that. Okay. So we're about halfway there. We're going to give it a little stir. Okay, so you can see we're just getting ready. So it's not going to be fully cooked. It's just going to be browned because it's going to, we're going to brown it off. We're going to take it out. Then we're going to continue creating our sauce in the same pan because, of course, now we've got all this flavor from our meat in here. And the sauce will be layered with flavors. So we want to do it all in the same pot. Okay. So you can see we just have, I don't know how well you see that, but there's a little bit of pink remaining. My guess is about 30 seconds and we'll be ready to scoop that out. Okay, you will need a lid for your pot, okay? As once we move along, you will need a lid. So if you don't have a lid, if you're using like a big deep frying pan like this and you don't have a lid, just have a look in your cupboard. You might have another pot lid for a large pasta lid or something that'll fit on there and a snap just to do what we need. Okay, so it's no longer pink. It's all brown. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a slotted spoon, but even if you don't have one, just use anything you can to scoop that meat out. And you want to leave the liquid behind, okay? So there's going to be a little bit of water left behind. Some of the oil is going to be left behind. And that is just fine. Because, well, the water's going to evaporate, and the oil, of course, is going to continue to add lots of flavor and do its job. Okay? A lot of people, when they come to my classes, they're surprised how much olive oil I use. They think a 1/4 cup is a lot. Typically, my ratio of olive oil to tomatoes is a 1/4 cup for this size bottle or a 28-ounce tin of tomatoes. And you have to remember, the olive oil helps lubricate the sauce. It also brings flavor. It does a number of things, okay? And my experience from teaching is a lot of people don't put enough olive oil in, okay? So here we are. Here's our half a medium onion. That's going in along with our carrots. That was quite a large carrot. I like to kind of hide vegetables in my sauces for my kids. Shh, don't tell them. But that's why I like to use like a large carrot, and I like to add the mushrooms and the peppers after too. But if you don't want to, you could always add less. Our garlic is going to go in there as well. Okay, so what we're doing here with our sofrito plus the garlic is we're going to sweat these out. Okay, so it's very important that we don't brown them. Okay, so when we sweat them, what we're doing is we're cooking them down. They're going to become fragrant. You're going to smell them, limp, and translucent. Okay, and that's typically what we're looking for. Now, if you need to add a little bit more olive oil, especially if you didn't have a slotted spoon and some of the oil ended up in there, you could always add more, okay? So I'm gonna add another drop just to make sure it's got some oil in there. Okay, so we're sweating these down. It's very important you don't brown them, okay? If you brown onions and garlic or even shallots, they tend to get a little bit bitter, so we don't want that. We want a really beautiful flavor. And actually, speaking of bitterness, this time of the year, I find my garlic, it starts to sprout. So when I first smash my garlic, I remove that little sprout in the middle because it's really bitter, all right? So I find that really makes a difference as well for flavor. So, okay, so these are sweated out, that they are kind of limp. Of course, the carrots are going to be a little firmer because they're a firmer vegetable, but that's all right. They'll soften up as we go along here and continue to cook this. Okay, so I'm on high heat this whole time, okay? And then what I'll do is I'll adjust it. I tend to start on really high heat with my sauces and then adjust as necessary. But like I said, my stove top is going to be a little different than yours as it's induction. And depending on your pot, again, that will make a difference. Okay, so this is all sweated out nicely. So that's the first step. Now what we want to do is we want to add this tomato paste. So remember, if you don't have tomato paste, you could in a pinch use a little bit of ketchup. So what we want is we want to add that really sweet tomato paste. And we're going to do a little bit of caramelization there, which means those natural sugars are going to come out. We might get some sticking on the bottom, which is all good because that's going to help us create a lot of flavor in this sauce, okay? So you can see the tomato paste is getting darker. Okay, so let's let it go there. One of the other ingredients that was optional, that I forgot to mention, I had it in the ingredient list on the Facebook post, but I didn't mention it today, is white wine. I've got probably about 2 tablespoons of a dry white wine there. If you don't have white wine, you could actually use cider. Cider works really well. You could use red wine, but just because this is a light colored sauce, I prefer something lighter, like a white dry wine, like a Pinot Grigio. But a cider would work well, and if you didn't have either of those, you could easily just use a little bit of stock, a little bit of chicken stock, or even water, okay? So you can see it's starting to stick a little bit on the bottom. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add this white wine, okay? And you can hear that in there. And we're going to scrape up all those brown bits at the bottom, and this is where it starts to smell amazing in the kitchen. Okay, so the alcohol is going to evaporate. Okay, we're scraping up all the bits. It's thickening up, okay? Smells amazing. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to high heat now. And I'm going to add my tomatoes. So remember, if you have plum tomatoes, you're going to have to puree them or hand crush them super fine, okay? So I've got my 1 bottle of my tomato passata here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup or 1 inch of water. You see how thick it is? Typically the Italian ones, which this one is, are really thick. So we put a little bit of water in there just to bring down all that extra sauce. So there it is. Okay, now I'm going to turn that down to a simmer. This sauce comes together super quickly. And I find if I am doing it in a saucier type of pan like this, which is kind of like a deep frying pan, it actually gives it a big surface area. So it cooks really, really fast. So you can get dinner on the table pretty quickly. Okay, so now we're going to add the meat back in and all the liquids. Oh, have we got a question?
Yeah, Dill's asking if it's cider. Is it cider with alcohol or just regular cider?
Well, cider with alcohol is fine because, of course, the wine's got alcohol in it, right? But if you didn't have cider with alcohol and you wanted to use regular, you could use. We're only talking 2 tablespoons, right? But you'll find, because especially with turkey, I think cider would actually lend a really nice flavor. When I bake a turkey, I actually pour a beer over it at the end, and it makes the most amazing gravy. So depending on what type of beer you have, you could even use a little bit of beer. Beer would pair fine with turkey as well. But just be careful, because with the tomatoes, with the acidity, you just want a little bit, and that's just to deglaze the pan, okay? So I'm back up on a high heat now. Typically with the tomato-based sauce, I'm going to show you this. Once I add the tomato, I go back up to a high heat. Once it starts bubbling, down to a medium high, and then I put the lid on, but leave a little opening, and that's just to let any steam escape. So I want me to show you that, okay? And I'm not so concerned so much as the number or on the dial here. I want you to pay attention to what's happening here. So we want a really light simmer. I actually turn that down a little bit. See the bubbles are going, okay? And that's where now the meat will finish cooking, the tomato will cook, all the flavors will melt, okay? So basically, this is gonna continue to cook. Depending on how large a batch you're making, it'll take longer. With this particular batch with a pound of meat, you're probably looking at about 20 minutes from start to finish if you have everything prepped ahead like I did here, okay? Now, for these additional vegetables, I want those to maintain their flavor and their texture, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, I've got a little frying pan here and I have about a tablespoon of olive oil on there. I'm gonna heat that up and I'm gonna just saute these a little bit and then add them right at the end. So like I said, I want them to kind of still taste like peppers and mushrooms and still kind of feel like that. If I were to put those in the beginning, like I did the other vegetables, they would kind of lose that. They would just absorb all the flavor and they would just become part of the sauce, and you wouldn't actually, you know, feel the distinct texture of peppers and mushrooms in your sauce, okay? So again, we're gonna heat this up. I've got a clean wooden spoon now. Now, if you had raw mushrooms, you would want to wipe them down, all the dirt off of them, and slice them, and they would go in first. They would go in first. You'd season them with a little salt and pepper, and typically what will happen is they'll release some liquid. Okay, you wait for the liquid to evaporate, then you would add in your peppers and saute them together until, you know, you're getting a little bit of color on them and most of the liquid is evaporated. Because these are canned mushrooms, which has been my greatest find since this whole thing started, I never used canned mushrooms, really, ever. And when I was, you know, stocking up at the grocery store before, you know, the big isolation came, I was trying to think of all our favorite things that I was going to cook, and I wanted to get mushrooms for pizza, but I didn't know what night I was going to make it, and mushrooms don't typically hold up very well, so I bought, actually bought a whole case of these organic canned mushrooms, and they have been the best thing. I've been adding them to so many of my dishes, and I love that they're already sliced, they're already cleaned, and they're really easy because they're basically cooked a little bit when they're processed in the can, so they're just ready to go. So that's a little tip for you if you want something really easy, okay? So you can see that's hot. Those are going in. Because it was canned, I'm gonna add the peppers right alongside. Okay, and I'm gonna season those with a little salt and pepper. So remember, seasoning enhances your flavors, all right? You don't want to omit this. You want to add a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, okay? And then this will not take long because those mushrooms are already done. We're just basically heating them through, make sure their liquid's all gone, and then we'll just add them right into our sauce. Okay, so if you weren't adding these vegetables, all you're waiting for is for this to finish cooking. We'd be finishing with seasoning and with our fresh basil. So just sit tight and we will work on that. So this is thickening up nicely. Let's see if I can show it to you. You can see it's getting really thick. And I like the turkey because it kind of stays in like big chunks. I find ground beef or pork or even veal, it kind of falls apart more. So this makes for a really chunky sauce. Okay, so you want to stir it every once in a while, and it's going to reduce by about a third, okay? So the water is going to evaporate, the flavors are going to develop, the tomato is going to become cooked, okay? So we're almost there. Continue to let that simmer while I finish these. Okay, so you can see these. You could use your imagination and put some other vegetables in here. It's important though that you understand that the vegetables that we added at the beginning though, those incorporate into the sauce. They kind of fall apart. The carrot's a little firm, so you will find little bits of carrots, but the celery and the onion will pretty much dissolve and disappear, and it really is amazing how much flavor that brings to a sauce. Okay, so I think we're pretty good here for reducing. So the way to check is you'll see where you started and you should be down by about a third, okay? And like I said, really thickened up there. And this smells really good, and I think this is good. Let's turn that out. Okay, so this is going in, and you can include that little bit of olive oil in there because there'll be lots of flavor in that. Okay, and then let's mix this in. Look at the beautiful colors. So we get a medley of colors now, and we're going to add some green with our basil. So, just show you that. So I'm down on low heat now. You can see how beautiful and thick that is. Okay, so let's let those flavors combine. I'm just going to turn it back up a little bit for a minute, and I want to direct your attention now to what's happening over here. So we're still going to season this and add our basil. Okay, but I want to show you this. So basically here what I've got is, I've got a pot of water. I've got 2 cups of water that have already come to a boil. I'm going to bring it back up to a boil, and I'm going to season that with a little bit of salt. And that's for my polenta. So polenta. A lot of people don't understand polenta that aren't Italian. Polenta is like grits, okay? So it's ground corn, and it's a really delicious base or vessel to hold sauce, just like pasta is. So just like you wouldn't really eat pasta plain with absolutely nothing on it, you wouldn't really eat polenta plain either. It needs to have something really tasty on top, and this is the perfect kind of thing. It really does well with something really hearty and flavorful on top, okay? And one thing that I really like to use is I go to the Italian section of my grocery store, and they have a product that's imported from Italy, and it's instant polenta, okay? And I mean, it sounds, oh, instant, it's processed. Well, it's not really. It's just kind of pre-cooked. And what it does is, the reason why I like it is it cooks really, really fast. Because when you do traditional polenta, depending on the cornmeal that you have, some take longer than others. You're looking at least a half hour or more of constant stirring to cook it. The instant takes a minute, okay? So, you know, you can make your sauce. This can be ready in a minute, and like I said, the sauce is anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes tops, and so you can have dinner on the table in like under 40 minutes. So this is boiling now, but it's really important, buy the one that's imported from Italy, because there's no additives or preservatives. It's just cornmeal that's been pre-cooked a little bit and then dehydrated, okay? So I've got, so I'm using just a quarter of the package here. So I've got 2 cups of water. I'm gonna season that with 2 nice pinches of seasoning. And then here's my polenta. I'm just gonna start stirring the water with the whisk and just slowly adding this. So nice little waterfall. And by the time I add all the polenta, which is, like I said, a quarter of the package, and the instructions are right on the package, this is basically gonna come to a boil and it's gonna be done, okay? So I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit, because when this starts to splatter, if it burns you, it's very, very hot, okay? So basically, it's going to get thick. It's kind of like cream of wheat. If you've ever made cream of wheat, see how the bubbles kind of pop up and break? And yeah, you can see it's kind of spraying a little bit, so you need to be careful you don't burn yourself. I'm going to turn it right down. Continue to stir it until it pulls away from the sides, and that is basically done, okay? So just about there, okay? And one thing about polenta that a lot of people forget is this is gluten-free. So if you're making regular pasta for your family and you've got someone that's gluten-free, this is a really quick little alternative. You can, excuse me, allergies again, not COVID, trust me. Anyways, you can always add a nice handful of Parmesan cheese to this if you want additional flavor, or you could just do it plain and then put your sauce on top and then put your cheese on top. Okay, so this polenta, as you can see, is done. So that is a little tip for you there. Now, if you only have regular cornmeal and you want to make a traditional style polenta, there's a blog on my website that'll give you directions of how to make a traditional polenta from ground cornmeal. Okay, So this now has all come together. It's nice and chunky. We're gonna season this, okay? So the best way to season a sauce is to add some salt. Now, typically, we got a pound of meat here. We've got a whole bottle of tomatoes. I'm gonna need at least 3 generous pinches to start. That's just sea salt. You could use regular table salt. I'm gonna add a generous pinch of pepper. I'm gonna tear up some fresh basil, and I had fresh basil this week. I didn't last week. I was in the grocery store and I found a little plant. So I've got a plant in my window. I'm really excited about that because I've had a hard time finding fresh herbs, and of course I won't have any in my garden a couple more months. So, okay, so the most important thing about seasoning is to use your taste buds. That's your best tool, okay? Because remember, even if I did give you an exact measurement of salt and pepper to put in here, the size of your vegetables are going to vary. You might have had like a ginormous carrot or a ginormous onion or etc. Those are all going to affect how much salt we're going to need, okay? So it's very important that you season, you taste it, and then you adjust it accordingly based on what it needs, okay? So let me just get a tiny bit. I don't want to burn myself. Needs a bit more salt. It actually needs a couple more. I think that should do it. And maybe we'll add a little bit more pepper too. You could add some crushed chilies if you want heat, okay? Typically in my house, I serve most of my tomato sauces without any spicy chilies in the sauce because not all my family members like it, and then we just serve it on the side so we could adjust it to taste. Okay, so let me get a clean spoon. We'll go in again. And then we'll see. So typically when you add the proper seasoning, you'll notice that the flavors get brighter, okay? Because the salt really brings out the flavors in the pot. And that's exactly what we did. So I have a beautiful, chunky turkey sugo, which like I said, you could do with any type of meat, any type of ground meat or a mixture of them. Okay, and I'm gonna just plate it up for you and show you what it looks like here on the plate. So in this particular case, I'm going to serve up a nice little helping of our polenta. Steph, do we have any questions, sir?
Nope, just dills from before.
And our sauce. I hope you guys can see that, and I even left them on basil leaf. And there you have it. We have got a beautiful turkey sugo with polenta. Steph, you want to bring it up close to the camera? Okay, let's see if you can do it. Do we have smell cam on? Can they smell it? I hope so.
Someone was talking about smell-o-vision earlier.
Smell-o-vision, were they? Okay, so enjoy. Just to finish up, I think starting next week, rather than live stream, I think we're going to go to straight up recording our videos. We've had a little bit of problems with the live stream on YouTube. We've had to do into 2 parts. So I think just to be safer, I think we're going to go with a straight on videotaping, but we'll be posting them. We'll probably stay with the same days, Mondays and Wednesdays, because everyone's kind of on that schedule. If there's something you'd like to see us do, please send us a message on Facebook. Please check out our website, nataliinaskitchen.com. Please check out the online school. I mentioned it earlier. It's a comprehensive course. It's not just videos like this. It gets into ingredient selection. There's menus. It's the lowest priced ever right now during the pandemic. You can get 30 plus recipes, 18 videos, timing schedules. Really, if you did 1 menu a week for 6 weeks, at the end of this whole thing, at the end of 6 weeks, you would be an amazing cook, and we'd be Italian Mama sisters. So there you go. Please check it out. There's 2 free courses actually right now. I'll mention that. We're still shipping our cookbook out once a week to anywhere in Canada or the United States. Lots of simple pantry staple recipes there as well. And so if you don't have any questions, then I will bid you farewell. Have a wonderful Easter weekend if you celebrate. And if you don't, have a great long weekend, because of course, yeah, we're all home anyways, but I know I'm going to enjoy some much needed time with my family. Please stay safe. Please take care of your vulnerable family members, and I hope to see you back in my kitchen. Ciao for now.